UFC 164 from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We got some pretty good fights on here. Facebook, you have 3 fights, and then on Fox Sports 1, you've got 4 fights. So looking over the Facebook portion of the card, the one name that really stands out to me, and this is an interesting fight. I talked about the Ultimate Fighter alums, Ally Aquinta. You might remember him from a couple of seasons ago. He's fighting Ryan Couture, the son of the legendary Randy Couture. So that'd be a great fight on Facebook. So make sure you tune in early to catch that one. And maybe, just maybe, with those big names on there, this fight might get bonus if it's an early stoppage. So we'll see what happens there. As for Fox Sports 1, we're looking at, it's really a smorgasbord of fights here because you've got 4 different weight classes represented on this one. And the 2 big fights on the Fox Sports 1 portion has to be Louis Gannat against Tim Elliott, and Jamie Varner fights Gleason Tybau. Man, Jamie Varner fighting at lightweight again. I mean, I hope he wins. I'm not saying he needs to retire, but he's getting up there, and hopefully he has a great performance on Saturday night. As far as the main card is concerned, we've got 5 big fights here, and definitely pay-per-view quality fights. Eric Koch fights Dustin Poirier. Ben Rothwell fights Brandon Vera. Chad Money Mendez fights Clay Guida. Frank Mir fights Josh Barnett. And the main event, lightweight title fight, Benson Henderson fights Anthony Showtime Pettis. Now, we'll start at the bottom there. I'm going to say my prediction is going to be Eric Koch. He's going to beat Dustin Poirier. I think he moves up in the division, and, I think title shot perhaps. We'll see what happens. Ben Rothwell against Brandon Vera, 2 big boys here. And, I'm going to go with Brandon Vera on this one. I think Rothwell will get stopped. I'm going to say first round. We'll see what happens. I mean, anything can happen in the heavyweight division because guys gas out or one lucky punch. And, we'll see what happens. I love watching the heavyweights go because it's so unpredictable. Sort of like the opposite end here with the featherweights with Chad Money Mendez and Clay Guida. Clay Guida, the Energizer Bunny of the UFC, fights Chad Money Mendez, another guy who is at the top of the featherweight division. This is a case where do you pick with your brain or do you pick with your heart? It's either A or it's B. It's nowhere in the middle. And I don't know what Stevie's going to say when he hears this, but I'm going to go with my heart. I'm going to go with Clay Guida in a slight upset. That might be my upset pick of the night there. The same main event has Frank Mir fighting Josh Barnett. 2 big boys again. This is a lot on the line. Josh Barnett, I mean, both these guys, Frank Mir, legends in the heavyweight division. If I had to put a gun to my head and make a pick, I'm going to go with Josh Barnett. I think Frank Mir, I don't see him winning this fight. I mean, Barnett's a really tough test, especially this late in Frank Mir's career, but Josh Barnett's not exactly a spring chicken. These guys are the guard when it comes to heavyweights, and I don't know what you do with whoever loses, but I think whoever wins has to be considered a top 5 or maybe top 4 in that heavyweight division. And the main event, you got Benson Henderson fighting Anthony Showtime Pettis for the lightweight title. This is the long-awaited title fight rematch from WEC. Those who don't know or forget, and how can you, all the commercials we've seen for this fight with Anthony Pettis defeated Benson Henderson back at the last WEC show with the Showtime kick heard around the world, the Matrix kick, so to speak. And Henderson wants to get that blemish off his record, and this is going to be a great fight. I expect this one to go all 5 rounds, and I see Benson Henderson retaining the title. I'm going to say it's going to be a lot closer than people think. I think it's going to be 48-47 across the board. So I'm going to go say 3 rounds to 2 for the champ. Partly because Henderson is so hard to stop, and to be the man, you got to beat the man, as the saying goes. And I just don't think Pettis has enough to beat Henderson twice. I think that was a lucky shot in WEC, and I think Henderson will be motivated more to win this fight. If Pettis wins, maybe Pettis is Henderson's kryptonite. It's going to be a great fight regardless, and anything can happen in the UFC. We've all seen that. So that's going to happen this Saturday night, and me and Stevie will be here next week to break down what happened, and we're going to preview what's happening next Wednesday. This is the show that's going to lead into the Ultimate Fighter debut episode. next Wednesday night at 10 o'clock Eastern on Sportsnet 360 in the States and Fox Sports 1 down there, Fox Sports 1 down in the United States. And, there's 2 fights on Facebook, 4 fights on Fox Sports 1, and 6 fights on the main card. Now, I'm not a big fan of they're stacking the card like this with so many fights. They're extending the card, so to speak. I think by the time 10 o'clock rolls around, the casual fan will be so burned out by this that I don't think the rating will be high, or the casual fan will forget that there's a show on, but leading into The Ultimate Fighter. Be very interesting to see what happens with the ratings on the debut episode if stacking the show like this is beneficial for UFC and Fox or not. Either or.
Well, here's the big question.
What's that?
Are they going up against Total Divas?
Ugh. God. No.
I'm sorry, that's a legitimate question you have to ask now.
God, no. I think that show was on Sundays, and the only reason the Total Divas took a hit for the first time, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, was there was a show that was going against it head-to-head called SummerSlam. That might be it, But people have DVRs these days, or PVRs, and you can tape one show and watch another, so.
This is true.
Alright, well, the Milwaukee show, not the Milwaukee show, the fight night coming up next Wednesday is coming in from Brazil, and, I'm just taking a quick look at the card here, the Facebook fights. It's some fighters I've never heard of, to be honest. Brazilian shows usually have Brazilian fighters who they're making the UFC debut where they were on the Tough Brazil show. So a lot of these names I'm not familiar with. The only fight on the Fox show that I could really talk about is Wilson Reese fighting Hugo Viana. And, I think Wilson Reese wins that fight, probably by second round, but it could go to a decision. As far as the main card is concerned, Joseph Benavidez fights Husier Formiga. You got Rafael Natal fighting Tor Trong. Yushin Okami fights Ronaldo Souza. Main event, Glover Teixeira fights Ryan Darth Bader. These are some great fights here, but with the Brazilian shows, the safe bet is to go with the Brazilian fighter, unless they're both Brazilian. Then it's, if they're unknown, both fighters, it's a flip of a coin, really. The one thing I love about these Brazilian shows is the crowd reaction, because it is simply amazing. It's sort of like having a UFC show in Canada, like in a new market, like in Winnipeg. We just saw that. Whenever they're in Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, that first show is amazing. That's sort of comparable to a Brazilian show because they love their MMA just like us Canadians do. And I think when the UFC travels to Edmonton or Ottawa coming up in 2014, 2015, I think that first crowd, you're going to get a sellout crowd, and it's going to have the same type of atmosphere just like this. As far as the main card goes, Joseph Benavidez, I think he wins his fight against Husier Formiga. I'm actually going to go with Tor beating Rafael Natal in a slight upset. Yushin Okami against Ronaldo Souza. Boy, that's going to be a good one. It's one of those things where heart versus head once again. I'm always going to go with my heart. I'm going to say Okami wins to upset the crowd in Brazil, but I got to go with Glover beating Ryan Bader in the main event. Glover is really positioning himself with a victory here to, climb that ladder, get a light heavyweight title shot or a number one contender shot, and he could be the next serious threat to John Jones if he can't get past Gustafsson. If Jones and Gustafsson, if John Jones gets beat there, maybe you have Jones fight Glover and number one contenders fight. Who knows? But that's a discussion for another day, because that fight is coming up in just a couple of weeks right here in Toronto and in the great province of Ontario, which I am currently living in. So we've talked about tonight's show. We've talked UFC 164 and next Wednesday's UFC Fight Night. So we're going to bring in Kev now, talk some news, and just for those keeping track, the UFC show currently going on, Court McGee and Robert Whittaker are in the second round. So keeping an eye on that, and it looks like McGee is taking a lot of damage to his right eye. The blood is starting to flow. So it looks like McGee might be losing this, but it's hard to tell with muted TV in UFC, because he might be bleeding, but he might be outstriking your opponent as well, right? So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. All right. So we're going to talk some news. And the first one is Olympic gold medalist Henry Cejudo is signed with Legacy. He'll debut at Legacy FC 24.